I'm Kate.
I'm Elle.
We are down to Fae, and we're continuing KF Breene month this week with A Cage of Crimson, which, like Demon Days Vampire Nights did with Penny and Charity, it's a continuation of the story we started with A Ruin of Roses, but shifting the focus to another couple, which is nice because you get to stay in the same world and see characters that you know and love, and like you get to see what happens to them past their last page.
It's also kind of fun because the characters we met last week are dragon shifters. These will be wolf shifters. And there's a few things that vary just with the different types of species, really. It's why when we discussed the fourth book in the Deliciously Dark Fairytales series last week, A Queen of Ruin, we didn't go too far into the details, so there weren't too many spoilers.
It's also a shift, not just which couple we're talking about, but it's another fairy tale. So we started with Beauty and the Beast, and this is more Little Red Riding Hood. And we're going to touch on book 4 for some background. Like you said, we didn't go too far into it, but we'll mostly be discussing book 5, A Cage of Crimson, and book 6, A Cage of Kingdoms.
A Cage of Crimson takes place a year and a half after book 4 and the end of the curse in the Wyvern Kingdom.
A quick refresh on the world and changes that occurred in book 4. The supernatural world is separated from the human realm by a veil. In the supernatural world, there were once 5 shifter kingdoms, but only 3 remain. 2 of the remaining kingdoms are led by wolves, the Red Lupine and the Flama kingdoms. And the third kingdom, now remembered, I know I'm saying that wrong, don't at me, is the third kingdom, which everyone now remembers. That's the Wyvern kingdom that's led by dragons. And there are also other kingdoms like fairy, vampire, and demon, which makes me wonder if we could ever get another book in this series or set in the same world.
Allegedly, the series is finished, but there were things that she ended with that they could build upon if she decides she wants to later. So maybe. The Wyvern Kingdom was wiped from the collective memory for 16 years thanks to a curse from the Demon King Dolian.
R.I.P. Dolian. I honestly would have loved some sex scenes with him, if I'm being honest, but he was killed in book 4. And that's how the curse that the Wyvern Kingdom, how everyone forgot them, that's how that curse ended.
There is a council of leaders from each kingdom that will sometimes meet to ensure peace. They're discussed throughout the first 4 books, but not heavily. So you're told that they exist, but you don't get a lot of background more than that.
Well, we were separated from them
because
of the curse.
It also, they seem almost kind of like NATO. So they'll get together to ensure peace for the realm, but it's not a regular, they don't rule together. They just get together for discussions and I guess mostly peace talks. In book 4, it was revealed just how many of those different kingdoms had leaders in the pocket of the Demon King.
And this helped Nifane and Finley, the king and queen of Wyvern. I love that they're now king and queen. And we get to see what happens with them. But that's how they learned who they could trust once the Demon King was killed.
Many of the dragon shifters and wolf shifters from other kingdoms have flocked to live in Wyvern under Nifane and Finley.
But also to be part of the pack under Weston, the strongest natural-born wolf alpha in the supernatural world.
He acts as beta to King Nifane and commands the landbound armies, while Micah, an alpha dragon shifter, commands the aerial armies.
And I love that he's not so, toxic masculinity, that he will be beta. He's alpha, but he'll also be beta to Nifane.
I think it's interesting, their dynamics, because it's not necessarily that a dragon is stronger than a wolf.
It's just different kinds of strengths.
Yeah, they can be, but they also fight very differently. There's different strengths and weaknesses for any of the shifters. So I love that they are working together instead of trying to fight it out.
And Queen Finley met Weston and Micah in the dungeons of the Demon King in book 3, and they all worked together to escape and later fight the Demon King. And we got a bunch of Weston's background and his stats in book 4.
Our MMC is tall with dark blonde hair, slate gray eyes, high cheekbones, and a small cleft in his chin. He sounds beautiful.
Usually I'm like, blonde hair.
I mean, they talk about,
but
I know blonde men are not usually our favorite, but it's dark blonde, so it's okay.
I don't know how that started, of we just mentally associate blonde hair with, is it Tamlin? Did he ruin blonde hair for everyone?
I think honestly, because we had several characters in different series that we just felt like we couldn't trust them, and they happened to be blonde, so it was misleading. But this is a good blonde. We like him. He is an alpha wolf shifter born into the court life of the Red Lupine Kingdom.
And he was the middle child of three boys, but he was fast tracked. Instead of like fighting and working his way up, he was fast tracked to the role of beta for the royals due to his rare blend of power and pack magic.
It's amazing because it's not really the same as any other alpha wolf shifter. His magic wolf song spreads like a sense of calm, unity, pack, and protection.
People want to follow him, which is different than the other. Well, not, I can't say everyone, but different than a lot of the royals.
Well, just other shifter groups too. Like dragons don't really have a sense of pack.
Yeah, you
Like,
have to like force people into submission and you fight to see who becomes alpha.
it seems something very specific to wolves that like their wolves all call to each other and they want that pack unity regardless of if there's an alpha or beta. So then when you have an alpha that you feel comforted by, they lean into that. But
Mhm.
I mean the dragons also respect the calm strength that he brings. He's very steadfast with that
Mhm.
strength in times of danger. And in general, he gives the other wolves and now like the dragons and other shifters a sense of purpose and a sense of unity.
Yeah, he inspires loyalty instead of demanding it.
We love that for our MMC. With these natural born qualities, it was very easy to train him to be a good leader because he seemed to have an innate understanding.
And they kind of took advantage of that in the beginning. Or they
Yeah.
definitely took
Oh, they
advantage of that.
definitely his parents were really big on the court life too. So the way he was raised, I don't think he understood the distinction for what he could be from what he was raised to be. They weren't that impressed. His parents weren't that impressed with him and raising him until he really started to show this aptitude and his magic manifested. And then they really showed a big interest and realized how important he would be.
It's kind of like our FMC, like her story. It might be why he's so understanding, not just like with the trauma that they've both gone through, but being naive and not seeing a situation for what it is. Like he can understand that because he was doing some fucked up shit. He just didn't know
He
or
didn't,
didn't
yeah. Well, if
realize.
nobody's ever told you it's wrong and it's so like accepted around you, it might take a minute to be like, some of this doesn't feel
Mhm.
right.
And his older brother was grown by then when all this was happening, when he was being fast tracked. But it meant that his younger brother was completely neglected. He was the Harry to his William. Did you know that? So Henry VIII was the spare. Like his older brother was this great hope of the House of Tudor.
Yeah, his first wife who he tried
Yes,
like
Catherine.
yeah, was his brother's wife very
But
briefly.
it's why we don't know much about Henry VIII's childhood because no one gave a shit
Yeah.
about him. And then when he was 10 and his brother died and his dad still didn't give him any responsibilities, and it's why he was so underprepared to be a king.
Yeah.
I mean, he was also like a huge piece of shit, but he was also just very untrained.
Yeah. Yeah, Weston's poor brother. Weston's job as the beta to the royals was to seek out wolves from their kingdom and others that could benefit the court. So basically, he's kind of stealing people from other kingdoms.
Mhm.
Anybody he found that would seem of value, he would basically trap them with his magic, forcing them into a bond with his pack.
Which is such a violation.
I guess, and if they're wolf shifters, wolves tend to lean toward wanting to be in a pack. So he was able to, I guess, use that to his
Like leverage
advantage.
it.
And he probably in his mind was like, it's better for them to be in this pack and we'll take care of them. But it still wasn't giving a lot of choice when you
Yeah.
force it.
And he knows, and he doesn't know yet, but he will learn how important choice is and how it feels for it to be taken away.
Hmm.
So it's even more fucked up. But when the shifters are in wolf form, it's easiest for Weston to exert his power over them and bond them to him and his pack. And when he was young and with the support of his parents and the royals, he didn't recognize how fucked up it was until his younger brother wanted to leave the pack.
Yeah, his poor brother, because he'd been neglected, he'd basically begun to wither. But
Mhm.
the royals made Weston force his brother to stay just so they could like use him for breeding and keep the bloodline in the court.
And it was a real turning point for his brother, but it was also a turning point for Weston. The forcing of the bond caused his brother to become more wild, like more animal than man, and self destructive. And it was their older brother that pointed out to Weston how he was failing in his duty to not only protect those weaker than him, but also in his duty to his family. Because being alpha is not just about forcing people to do what you want them to do. Like you're supposed to be their protector and their leader.
But also, he had been so fast tracked and elevated that I don't know that he was ever being told that he was doing wrong. So I don't
Mhm.
think that he was necessarily walking around with like an arrogant
Oh,
attitude,
no,
but
he
like
just didn't know.
nobody was really saying like, "Hey, don't do that. Hey, this doesn't work." So it hadn't properly registered, I don't think, until his
Mhm.
older brother was like, "You're not taking care of him or thinking about his best interest." It really got Weston's attention, and instead of releasing his younger brother, Weston released everybody else and left the
Plot
court with
twist.
I was like, "That's I love that." He
Mhm.
left everybody and he left with his younger brother to go take care of him. They moved to a small village in the Flamma Kingdom to give him the time and space to help his brother.
It was kind of like Wolf Rehab, or do you remember that show? I don't remember. I like have a core memory of watching it. I was home from school sick and it would always be on during the day. And it was they would send kids to prisons to like scare them straight. Do you
I
remember that?
know what you're talking about.
That's fucking
I
insane
don't remember what it
looking
was, but
back.
yeah, I know what you're talking
And it would
about.
just be literal criminals screaming at these children who just had bad attitudes.
Yeah, I'm not sure if it, like, worked like boot camp, but
Yeah.
they hoped it would. Once his brother was back in his right mind, Weston released him from the bond and they found a new pact together. Weston became very conscientious about not letting the power that he had corrupt him.
He's very mindful of not taking advantage of people because he can, like, he, with his strengths and like what he's capable of, he could be a real villain if he wanted to be.
Yeah, there's no telling when he was younger if those that were training him were like, "It's for their best interest. You're
Right.
doing this to help." There's no telling what he was fed, like what propaganda.
Hmm.
But I am impressed that he stepped back and really considered the situation. He's like, "No, I don't think this isn't right." Weston became alpha of that remote pack, and his brother worked his way up to be beta. The royals often sent wolves to try to bring Weston back to the Red Lupine Kingdom, but none of them were strong enough to force him to do shit. So they eventually gave up.
And it was from that pack that Weston was wolf napped by the Demon King. And wasn't it once they're taken, do people just forget they existed? Or
I think
it's like people didn't know that people were being kidnapped.
well, in some kingdoms, I think there may have been like, "Oh, it's a missing person," but
Hmm.
I don't know that anybody considered that he had actually been taken because he was the alpha. He's so
Right.
strong. It didn't like register that somebody had come for him.
And he was on the beach late at night rescuing a child. Of course he was. From the demons, and they took him using suppression magic. And Weston was straight up not having a good time in the demon dungeons.
Yeah, this is something like Hadriel has joked about it, and we've heard a lot of like jokes to lighten the extent of what everybody went through with the demons and not having choice. But Weston is very open about,
Hmm.
no, I was beaten and tortured for years and I was used sexually against my will. Like, there's no joking with Weston. He's like, no, this was terrible time.
So when Finley and her crew were ready to break out of the demon dungeons, Weston was immediately willing to help.
Once they broke out of the demon prison and Weston returned to his pack, he found that his brother had worked his way up to Alpha.
I love that. And the wolves in the pack seemed happy. And he, like, his brother sucked at court life, but he was actually perfect for like a large remote pack. And Weston didn't want to take that from him. He's just very selfless.
Yeah, Weston happened to help him find a way that he could thrive. So, like, why would I take that? It's my brother. Why would I take that away from him?
God,
And
I
everybody's
dated a
doing
guy named Weston in high school. I'm so
really?
triggered. Every time I say it, I'm like, oh God.
Sorry, we've got more
He
Weston
would
to go.
he was the kind that every party he would break out his guitar and no one ever asked, and he would just start singing
Oh, so like every guy in
like
Nashville.
Wonderwall. Yeah.
I'm gonna be famous. No, you're not.
Fuck you, Weston. He's not listening.
This Weston decided to move to the Wyvern Kingdom when he saw how well his brother was doing to continue to help Finley against the Demon King Dolian.
And the way things came together in book 4 for Wyvern is actually a big deal. Like you were saying, it makes sense for the dragon shifters and the wolf shifters to work together, but they didn't get along. Like historically, they never worked together because they didn't get along.
Even as shifters, like they just function differently, especially the wolves having the pack mentality, like just innate pack mentality. But dragon shifters think they're the biggest and baddest, so most of them have too much pride to work with anybody else. Like if you traditionally were in a wolf kingdom, it meant that all of the royalty and the nobility were wolves, and vice versa for the dragons. There was no intermixing about who was
Mhm.
strongest. It was just, no, the wolves rule here, the dragons rule here. But Finley, Nifane, and then Weston and Micah have all realized how much sense it made to fight together.
Because the wolves could cover the ground while the dragons covered the skies. Like, it does make sense. Like, if you're going to have an army, you want to have like an air force and a navy and like army.
Sure. Well, and I mean, even the dragons can fly and they can see things and they can blast fire, but they're not like down in the mix
They
fighting.
got big backs.
Yeah, they can't just they can't just easily move around to fight. But because Nifane had lost his wings with the curse, he helped to train the rest of the dragons to learn to fight on land. And it actually went great with the wolves. Like they could it's like they had the right sense on how, like they didn't have to be trained. They understood how to work together, and the wolves would go underneath the dragon bodies and in between, like they're in between their legs. They're covering all the gaps to like work as a unit.
And Nifane also recognized that the wolves in his kingdom felt torn. Like they were drawn to Weston, but they still wanted to follow Nifane and Finley. So it worked best for Nifane and Weston to work together. I mean, like the best way to show unity, they should have probably all fucked. Like a group sex scene would have been nice, but
well, if they were all involved, because there's
like Nifane, Finley, Weston, Micah.
Should we all just share? Should we just not even ask questions and go? Like there is a sort of some group sex later, but they're all still like with their own partners. So like sexy, but like we could have done more with this.
Which is more like I like it in theory. I like reading group sex scenes, but I don't even want to have sex with the lights on in real life. Like if the lights are on and I'm naked, it better be the morgue.
It is one thing if you're directly involved with me, but if you're further away, I don't need you to see with certain angles. You know, like I don't need you just watching what's happening here.
I have to control my angles. I'd be like, you can't stand over there and watch. You have to come to my good side.
Oh my gosh, I can't be sitting down. Like you can't just no. Yeah, it sounds great in
theory.
And
is it silent and it's just like the sounds?
I don't know.
Because it's not always sexy sounds. Does everyone need to hear me queef? I don't think so.
Is everybody just sitting and watching what's happening in this group scene?
I dated someone that called me Queen Laquifa one time.
That's so aggressive.
Like, I couldn't even be mad.
Excuse me.
Funny.
I don't know. When people start like, it's funny, it just happens. But also, if you tease me about it, I'm like, you angled my hips. You calm down. This is you.
I'm not pushing air myself.
Yeah, I'm not like, never mind. This is way off track. Weston had such a strong hold on the wolves throughout the Wyvern Kingdom that with Nifane's blessing, he established a hierarchy amongst the wolves so that all different regions could be properly managed and represented.
In book 4, when Nifane and Finley went with Weston and it's Finley's brother Hannon is back in the mix. They went to the council expecting to present their case against Dolian. Then they had a run-in with the king from the Red Lupine Kingdom.
I think they knew this could probably be touch and go because like the Red Lupine Kingdom didn't own Weston, but they were clearly upset that he got away from them. And
they were using him.
Oh, yeah.
The same way that when we meet our FMC, when she was being used, like they don't want these people back because they give a shit about him.
They just think they seem to think they had some kind of claim on him, especially because his parents were probably still there. But the king, that asshole, saw an opportunity to try to make legal claims that Wyvern had taken his beta Weston. So to avoid long, drawn-out legal and political battles, which apparently is a thing.
I love that in this book with, like, nodding and public sex, we're also like, the legal system.
It's interesting because, like, maybe because the Wyvern Kingdom had been cursed for so long, they didn't discuss a lot of the legal, like the way the laws that used to be there because everything had been so like kind of fallen apart. But then to go back to the council and they're like, well, they could make this, they could, try to sue for this or say this. And I'm like, who are we? What?
What's happening?
But I guess to avoid all the drama and the trouble that this powerful kingdom could cause, the Wyvern Kingdom provided the Red Lupine Kingdom with a shit ton of money in compensation for the loss of Weston.
And it essentially bought his freedom and gave him the chance to settle and like really build a home for himself in the Wyvern Kingdom, which is what he's been doing for the last year and a half since the end of the curse.
Weston has helped to establish safety, representation, peace, and trade throughout the Wyvern Kingdom.
And now that everyone remembers their existence, trade has been reestablished with the other kingdoms, which is great, but it's also led to an influx of addictive and deadly drugs being brought into the kingdom, the magical fentanyl being brought in.
It's like fentanyl, acid. There's a couple of things that it's just wreaking havoc. Weston and his closest pack members take on the task of sussing out where these drugs originated from and cutting them off at the source.
And it's another unexpected, like, you're in this fantasy magical world, and we're talking about, like, suing and the justice system, but also, like, pharmaceutical like, I mean, she's a pharmaceutical company of one, but you know what I mean? Like, the integration of, like,
Yeah.
science is really interesting. This brings us to book 5, A Cage of Crimson, and our FMC, Aurelia. Is that the not Snow White? What am I who's the
Aurora
Disney
is Snow White.
Aurora, that's what I was trying to think
But
of.
Aurelia, one, it sounds like we're talking about
Throne
Throne of
of
Glass.
Glass, Aurelia,
They
okay.
spelled it differently, but
Yes.
it's very similar. It's interesting as you say that about like the pharmaceutical because Aurelia has come up with all kinds of like instruments that she's created for herself. And I'm like trying to envision what those could be. Like one of them sounds like a microscope.
Well, if anybody would understand it would be you. I didn't excel in science, but
It's been a few years since I did the chemistry side of it, but she is like in deep with like her experimenting. Aurelia Silverwood is
we
27.
love an age-appropriate queen.
Yes, and she's 5'2", so she is for Henley's tall, Aurelia is our
Mhm.
smaller FMC that like, we see a lot of traditionally.
She's a lot like her. I mean, like, there are differences.
It's funny because as the story goes along, they try to claim that wolves are very even-keeled and dragons are like short-tempered and love always spoiling for a fight. I'm like, Aurelia, she's not that even-keeled. There's a lot of times
Yeah.
she's ready for a fight too. But she's 5'2" with hazel eyes and long black hair that has white streaks in it that she thinks are caused by her past trauma.
I wish I had a better reference that's actually relevant, but when I think of white streaks in hair, did you ever watch so there was a Mortal Kombat movie in the 90s, but then there was a second one called Annihilation, and it was, I wanna say, Katana's mother
I
who could,
don't
like,
think I did.
screech, and she had dark hair with, like, a big white streak, and I can't help but
Wow.
picture that. There's probably better examples.
I was thinking of, is it Rogue from
Yes!
X-Men?
Yeah, okay.
I mean, hers is a very specific reason that she has the white hair, but
And that can really happen, right? Like, it changes your hair color?
yeah, well, and it
Like,
when you're
if you get really
stressed, you could
scared?
get gray hairs and there's things that could happen. With her, we find out more later about her heritage, and some of it might actually be related to her heritage, but she doesn't know that right now.
And when you start book 5, it's a little hard to understand the world that Aurelia lives in, even though we know this world, but her knowledge is so limited. She's not an unreliable narrator, she's kind of a biased narrator. Like,
Yeah.
you can't really trust everything she says, not because she's lying, but because she's just ignorant, and not saying that to be shitty or rude, but she is ignorant.
Yeah, she's just very unaware. There's things that she'll say when the book
She's
first
sheltered.
starts that you're like, "What? What do you
Mhm.
mean with the patrol? What do you mean you can't leave the path?" Like, it's
Yeah, she
again,
just says things very nonchalant of like, "We can't do this," or when you're like, "Wait a minute."
why? Like, it doesn't make sense out of context, and of course, this has got a fairy tale basis, so there's certain things that if it's, like, relates to Red Riding Hood, it kinda like you're like, "Oh, okay, I could see that." Like, "Don't stray off the path, we're
Mhm.
going to Granny's house." Aurelia lives in a small village in a very remote area of the Red Lupine Kingdom with tightly patrolled borders, which should get her attention, that's
Mhm.
unusual. She never knew her father, and her mother died horribly when she was 12. She was saved off the street by a character known as Granny.
Hence Little Red Riding Hood, but I gotta say, I hate saying the word granny out loud.
Yeah.
I would prefer any other word, but Granny is an older alpha wolf, and she's not actually blood related to Aurelia. Aurelia's mother never had any magic, and she was a shifter, but she had no animal.
Aurelia's grandparents were shifters, and it was truly their child. So it was like, I think it can rarely happen, but because it doesn't happen very often, everybody's very superstitious about it.
But now looking back, did her mother really not have, or was it just like
Her mother really didn't have,
okay.
but it is deep in book 6 that we get more information about Aurelia's bloodline, and there is a mixing of
Mhm.
other bloodlines and magic that actually they work to cancel each other out in her mother. But it's not a problem for Aurelia. It's just like basically like genetics, how it all lined up. But her mother didn't know that. So since her mother had no magic, no animal, it was assumed that Aurelia also had no magic, no
Mhm.
animal. And this kingdom is very superstitious. And they're very like that was another thing when I was reading it. I was like, I don't understand. They're mean to her because she doesn't have magic.
Yeah, what? That's not
It's
contagious.
it's literally but they act it's weird, they shun her as if she could be contagious, like, if they get too close to her, like, almost like she's a null, like, "You could affect mine somehow."
God, do you remember Charlie the unicorn? The "Shun the non-believer." Whenever someone says "shun,"
"Shun,
shun.
shun." God, that was, like, so old. That's funny. Yeah, essentially, they were shunned everywhere they went. Aurelia's mother fell in love with a man high in the royal court, so she was a beautiful woman. I guess maybe he wasn't as worried about her lack of magic because she was pretty. But when he found out that she was
Men.
pregnant, I know, right? He had her banished. It's so brutal.
She and Aurelia were treated horribly, like, no matter where they went, people were scared to even get close to them. They would be kicked out of wherever they were because they didn't have their animal or magic, and people really thought they could catch it like it was a disease or that they were, like, cursed or something.
They just yeah, it's very superstitious. There's no reason for this, but I guess if nobody else has this issue or it's not common, like, people are very cruel about things they don't understand or something
Mhm.
that's different. The women were both called dud,
Can you imagine being called a dud your whole
which
life?
apparently is just a really cruel term for them. So, like, for me as a dud, I'd be like, "Great, whatever," but it was very hurtful for them to hear
Yeah.
it. But even worse than that, they were often assaulted in the streets. Like, usually it was verbal, just people saying mean words and slurs, but there were times that her mom was literally stoned. People were throwing stones at her just walking home.
It took a long time for them to find any sort of home since they were ran out of every village they settled in. And then one night when Aurelia was 12, men broke into their home and beat her mother half to death, also knocking out Aurelia. And she awoke to a fire raging around them. And she tried to pull her mother from the house, but just touching her mother made her cry out in pain.
Poor Aurelia, she wasn't sure what to do, and her mother was, like, begging her just to flee and to save
The fucking
herself.
trauma you would have from seeing something like
I
this.
mean, it's like you put her through horrible pain trying to save her, and you're 12, and Aurelia's 5'2" as a grown adult, so she would have been tiny.
Mhm.
It's just so sad, and I'm sure she felt so much guilt. But she fled, and then she was homeless and living on the street. Granny found Aurelia on the street. She'd been abused, she was starved, and Granny took her in.
So you understand why she latched on to any sort of kindness, like, even before the fire, she had, had the only kindness she got from was from her mother, who was also shunned by anyone. So anytime anyone was nice to her or took care of her, like, even if it was, like, bare minimum, the bar is in hell, she just, like, latched on to it.
And she doesn't have anybody else, so this became like a family figure
Mhm.
for her. Granny brought r Granny brought Aurelia to this remote village for protection. She gave her a job, and her job was to be creating, quote, "medicinal products."
The villagers still weren't kind to Aurelia, but she at least felt safe and cared for, like, for the first time in her life. Granny became her family, like her only family. So it does take a while for Aurelia to see that Granny is actually emotionally abusing her and grooming her.
Yeah. Granny had Aurelia physically abused by her enforcer, Alexander. So, over the years, Aurelia's anger turned to denial and she suppressed some of these terrible memories from the abuse. She did it in order to survive there.
Aurelia does not have a magical connection to plants, not in the way that Finley does, but she does find a way to work with them to create the drugs. And by the time Aurelia is 27 and book 5 begins, she's created a total of 20 different products that Granny sells for her on the shadow market.
Yeah, she has like a terminology for these things. So another when you're first reading it, you're like, "What?" Like when people are high, she talks about it being their journey.
hmm
Or like she refuses to say drug. She just calls it products.
Yeah, she's a little Delulu.
Yeah, she knows that what she's creating is illegal, but she has tried each and every one of her products to ensure that they're not addictive or harmful. So it's illegal, but she doesn't really feel bad about it because she thinks that it'll help people that just need a break, like they're stressed out or like
hmm
really anxious. For moral reasons, she also doesn't feel bad because she refuses to create anything that would be chemically addictive.
And she's even built in fail safes to each drug or product, as she calls them, so that if someone hates the effects and wants out, they can get out. And she includes instructions for all of that with each batch of products she makes. But again, she's not in the supply chain part of this.
Yeah, she's at the
So
very
when it
first step,
leaves her door, she has no control over what's going on.
but she trusts Granny
I know
implicitly.
she's not asking any questions.
She's somehow in all this time, she's begun to deny the problems that are in front of her, and she's like, "No, she's definitely doing what I told her to do."
Which is, I mean, you would have to protect to protect your sanity, you have to kind of
Well, and
have
I
blinders on.
as the book goes on, we learn some things that had happened to her before, and it's like she just stopped fighting, and she's, yeah, done this protection in order to survive, like, day to day, like, this is the
Mhm.
best it could be. It took time to get the production to the point that it is in the beginning of book 5, like, with just how much Aurelia can make in a day. She creates these really large quantities every day. She works by herself from sunup to sundown.
Like, she's given a list of orders to complete each day, but she's not paid for her work. Granny allegedly provides plenty of food for the village and ensures that they're all taken care of and that everyone is safe in return for the products that Aurelia makes. But also, she's not like checking any of that.
Well, it's like she is, but we'll probably get into it in a few minutes, but she's ignoring the reality of it anymore.
Yeah.
You know, she's told herself that this is what it is, and she just her first thought when something comes up, she's like, "No, Granny takes care of us."
Mhm.
You know, even though she can see differently.
This is an insane parallel to make. But it makes me think of Lorcan, how
Okay.
he has in his head convinced himself that Maeve is not that bad
Mhm.
because he's blood sworn to her and can't do anything about it anyway.
Mhm.
So he's like, she's not that bad. It's fine. Everything is fine because the alternative is you're chained to a monster.
It sounds awful, but she is an abuse victim, but
Mhm.
it's like those in an abusive relationship, you lie to yourself. They gaslight themselves and make excuses to get by and not have to
Mhm.
face what they're experiencing, and her world is about to get shook.
Well, K.F. Breene is really good at writing trauma and like abusive situations, like in a very realistic way.
Yeah, and it is hard, I think, when you first start this book. It's very interesting, but at the same time, there's moments where you're like, "Girl, what are you?"
It's easy to get
She
frustrated with
she's
her.
very defensive about things that it
Mhm.
takes a minute, you're like, "Oh, okay, I see what
Yeah.
you're doing there." Because like, initially, you're like, "That's not true.
Well, it's
What are you
so
mad
easy
about?"
to know that when you're looking at it from an outside
Mhm.
perspective, but sometimes when you're in those situations, it's really hard. Like, how many times have we dated pieces of shit and then been like, "No, you guys just don't know him like I do. You don't see, like, the good." And it's like, "No, he's a piece of shit."
Oh, yeah, dating somebody with an addiction, which I've done, and you're like, "No, he had a horrible childhood." I'm making
Mhm.
excuses for where things are
I know who you're
now.
talking about, and I do not wish him well.
Me either,
Fuck that
like,
guy.
over that guy, fuck it. Granny also pays special attention to Aurelia, so, like, again, part of the grooming,
Mhm.
she
It's like a
brings
cycle of being really nice and then you do the abusive shit, but then you follow it up and you're just at that point, they're clinging to any sort of kindness you give them.
yeah, so, Aurelia probably was very angry in the beginning, but, like, it's the grooming now, she doesn't wanna disappoint Granny, so she's always working to, like,
Even calling
do
herself
better.
Granny is a manipulation.
It's weird because everybody calls her Granny,
It's so
like, the
weird.
whole thing, she just
I didn't call my grandmother Granny.
yeah. I don't even
Ugh.
know if she has any kids. She just is Granny, which is
Mhm.
weird. But she'll do little things like bring Aurelia gifts, like thoughtful gifts. So Aurelia's like, she really cares about me. She's
Mhm.
paying attention. She'll invite her for tea, and she doesn't do tea with anybody else in the village. So again, Aurelia's special. She'll make her favorite treat, like sticky buns. It
I love
really,
sticky buns.
it really grooms her.
When I was in I don't remember if it was Sweden. Whoever is like known for those, like the original sticky buns. We were on this food tour and they brought out the sticky buns and I didn't say a word. Like I was just sitting there and about to start eating and the waitress was like, "We don't do cream," like in her accent. I'm not good at accents. "We don't do cream cheese on top." Like I was about to ask, I guess, because I look so American. And I was like, "Okay." That's
It's
okay.
it's not funny, but everybody clearly is like, "Oh, they're like
Oh,
cinnamon rolls." And you're
I
like,
bet
"No."
there have been a million Americans who have been like, "Hey, where's the cream cheese?" But I had not said a fucking word.
That would be me. I'd be like, "Can I get some cream
Can
cheese with
I get a
this?"
side of cream cheese? And with her trauma, it is easy to see why she's in denial about what's going on. Like this village doesn't have running water, electricity, and they don't have enough food. Most of their homes are literal shacks. So she's not taking care of people.
I don't
And you
yeah.
can see that.
Over the years, she's been like, "No, she provides for us. She gets books and toys for the kids. She fixes people's roofs," and you're like, okay."
Yeah, are the fixed roofs in the room with us right now? Like, you can see how shitty everything is.
You can she's been doing it for so long to survive that she's gotten away from some of the truths.
What's the plural of roof? Roofs? That sounds so weird. It's not roofs.
I was about to say that out loud.
Roofs.
I guess it's roofs. Oh,
We're
man, I'm gonna spiral on that.
we're like, Aurelia's dumb. Anyway, what's the
Roofs?
plural? Reef?
What? Well, they're roofs. Roofs. Roofs?
Roofs.
Okay, I have to stop saying it because I'm just like lost in that word now. Aurelia will later learn that the people in the village around her are actually kind of like hostages as well.
Mhm.
They aren't allowed to leave without an escort, which Aurelia believes is for their safety.
She doesn't realize that if someone does leave, a family member, usually a child, is always forced to stay to ensure the villager won't discuss the village with outsiders and that they'll return. Little do they know, I don't give a shit about any kids.
Kate's like, I dare
I'd be
you.
like, here you go.
Granny has taken many steps to groom, emotionally manipulate, and control Aurelia, as well as the rest of the village, because Aurelia is not the only one that gets little gifts here and there. It's not until these unexpected invaders show up in the village that everything she knows gets turned upside down.
And the spice in this book kicks off within the first few chapters, which we love.
Yeah.
Weston and his pack have tracked Granny down to this village for production because, again, they're looking into where these drugs are coming from. And she's kept the area, it's well fortified with guards and fairy magic and demon magic, but Weston's pack is still able to get in.
Aurelia has spent all day working on a large order when she's interrupted by Razor Fang, aka Raz.
AKA Harold.
Yeah.
But after his habit of taking too much of the product, which I thought it was universally like you don't smoke your own, or what is it? If you're like a drug dealer, you don't use your own supply.
Yeah.
But he's renamed himself. And Raz doesn't actually help Aurelia with creating the products, but he does tend to the garden to maintain the Nympfire leaf and other items that she needs. So what was it in the first books? It was the
Everlast.
Everlast, yes.
So we have different but important plants for this one. Raz, I wasn't sure what to think at first since it seems like they're working together, but he hates Aurelia. The villagers don't like Aurelia.
Yeah.
They're not like openly hateful, but they aren't kind to her either.
They just need her.
And he's also like, he's not doing anything to help and he's overtaking the product and he often calls her a dud, which again is really cruel for them.
On this day, after Aurelia has worked long hours, Raz burst into work high as fuck. And it's his job at the end of the day to make sure the product gets to Granny's cottage. Of course, it's a Granny's cottage. But Raz seems to be having like a bad trip or journey, as she calls it. And he turns violent. So Aurelia traps him in a closet to help him come down from the drug.
Aurelia now has to take the product to Granny's herself. She must stay on the path and not leave it for fear of getting lost.
And one time she did get lost, and the guards were like accusing her of trying to escape and threatening her.
And she definitely wasn't. She really did get lost. But since then, it's brought up constantly how she got lost. Like one time I stepped off the path.
She made out with a hot dog one time.
But literally, like every time now, people are like, remember to stay on the path. She's like, I effing know.
Got it.
Got it.
She doesn't. Aurelia notices a dark shadow in front of her on the path, a shadow that becomes a very tall, very sexy man.
Even though she can't see his face, she's immediately attracted to him. Like she's having all kinds of physical feelings. Due to the lava-like reaction in her heart, she assumes that she accidentally ingested some of her hallucinogenic product.
Things get spicy and she just rolls with it. She's like, you know what? I'm going to put me first. And she can tell the man in this vision is a wolf shifter because she can feel the knot at the base of his dick. Because that's right, bitches. We have knotting in this book. And I love the Omega verse. Like I love knotting and alpha and omegas and all of that.
The nodding doesn't happen this very first time, but she can feel it. Because nodding 101, it's only wolf shifters that knot before they come. The knot literally locks them inside their partner, and how long they stay knotted inside varies depending on how powerful the shifter is. but the male will stay knotted as long as the female is still orgasming.
Which I love compared to, I think it was Bride,
Yeah, they
where
just
he would just
finish.
knot, and then it was like 30 minutes of they were done.
Yeah, they're
And
just
so you're
laying there
just
together.
staring at each other? Or like, what do you do? He's just laying on top of you for 30 minutes?
Yeah, I think we made some jokes about that.
You're, like, looking at your phone or if it's from behind and you're standing, I
Yeah,
just
like, cool. Can we lay down? Can we shift? Like, it's interesting when they do finally have sex and he knots in her, like, the way it's described, because the sex scenes in this series, they're so smutty. They're
Mhm.
so fun and they last for several pages. You get all the details you could possibly need.
Yeah, there's no, like, fade to black
But,
here.
like, once he's locked in, whenever they do the knotting, they talk about the different angles he's grinding and making
Mhm.
moves so that she
It sounds a lot better the way that it's written here.
yeah, like, if we're gonna keep this going, let's enjoy ourselves.
But he
But
would also only be knotted for, like, 5 seconds for me. I don't know if I do it wrong, but I'm like, "Huh," like, I lock up and then I'm done.
well, I don't know, he might keep you going so then you'd enjoy it
That's true. There's only
because
one way to find out.
right.
I gotta fuck a wolf.
It's interesting because, like, however many times she keeps going, like, how many orgasms she has, he will also continue to orgasm. So it's
Mm.
like they both keep feeding off of each other.
And after some dirty sex on the path, the man issues a warning that she isn't safe and must flee tonight, and then he ghosts. I'd be like, "Did any of that just happen?"
No wonder she was like, "This is definitely a weird I'm just having a hallucination, it's fine." We switch POVs to learn that this is Weston. This book is so fun because it has the multi POV switching
Mhm.
between Aurelia, Weston, and Hadriel.
But Weston is pissed at himself for fucking her because to him, she is this monster who's creating drugs that are killing people and like tearing families apart throughout all of the kingdoms. And she's meant to be taken back to the dragons for punishment, but he couldn't control himself because he recognized she's his true mate.
This is a big deal. I think we talked about it for Finley and Nifane, but True Mate is like soulmate.
We love a fated mate
It's very,
because then
very
you can't
rare.
leave me.
You can't go anywhere. It's a real enemies to lovers story right now.
And Aurelia isn't the only one with trauma. Like we talked about, Weston was used for pleasure against his will in the demon dungeons. And the demon sex magic was used almost like a drug at the parties, giving Weston a personal vendetta against the creator of these addictive drugs because he understands what it's like to be under the influence of something that you can't stop.
Granny has a small, humble cottage in this village, but what Aurelia doesn't know is that she has a massive estate near the castle.
So it would seem that the royals in this kingdom are okay with her products now being sold at the royal market instead of just the shadow market.
Weston returns to his pack to work out a plan for how to take down this village while Aurelia continues to Granny's to deliver the product.
But Granny notices the state Aurelia arrives in. And Aurelia tells her that I think I just discovered a new aphrodisiac.
Granny's like, "Girl, what happened to you out there?"
I was
Okay.
doing research.
Sure, a wink wink. Granny gifts Aurelia a beautiful and expensive red cloak so that she can go out tomorrow night to collect more of the flower that will potentially help create this new aphrodisiac.
Very Red Riding Hood.
Yeah.
Alexander, the abusive and creepy fuck that Granny uses to like dole out the punishments, arrives the next night and he's going to escort Aurelia out into the woods and off the path to search for more Moonfire Lily.
The moonfire lily is the flower that Aurelia had been working with the day before, so she is assuming that this excitement last night was all because of something with the lily. It's really hard to find this lily. It's very rare, but it helps to enhance all potions and brews, and the petals glow a soft pink.
Aurelia works with it under the full moon because it's very like the plants in this series are very sensitive.
It's just so fairy tale.
Mhm.
There's so many specifics.
And the petals never actually burn, but instead change color and have enhanced smell after the fire. And the petals like don't even become hot. It's really interesting.
Yeah, like she plucks the petals and they don't wither or die not being attached to the stem. So it's a very unique flower. The moonfire lily also prefers to be hidden and shaded.
Aurelia, being the only non-shifter in the village, has terrible night vision. I think I do too. Sometimes when I'm driving at night and I look at lights, they have like a streak of light coming off of them. I
Oh,
don't know what
like
that's called.
is it an aura?
I don't know. Am I seeing ours? That can't be right. No, there's something else.
Well, I have to have glasses at night too because of that. It messes with my
Oh, maybe I
vision.
need glasses. But so she has terrible night vision, which is part of the reason she's always told not to veer off of the path. And Alexander will be there to escort her so that if she leaves the path to find the lilies, that she can still find her way back. But she also has a very special like lamp, like a fairy lamp.
Yeah, so she has a little something to see by, but I think it's just so dark out there in the woods that it only helps a bit.
But then the fairy lamp kind of like comes back
Oh yeah,
into play.
that fairy lamp becomes important later. There is an attack on the village while Aurelia is out looking for the Moonfire Lily. Alexander tells her to run, but not to go home, and he basically abandons her.
Yeah.
Like he's just gone. She's like,
Women and children first.
can you take me back to the path? But she's able to recognize some of the trees and find her way to Granny's cottage. When she enters Granny's cottage, she finds that Granny has been slaughtered on the floor, and there are 4 of Weston's pack members around her.
Not a good look. Aurelia grabs an axe and attacks, and then one of the members of the pack, Dante, hits her in the back of the head to knock her out just as Weston enters the cottage. So, he just saw his true mate.
He goes to hit her, and Weston's like, no!
Yeah.
Wait! Aurelia is not a shifter, however, so she can't recover quickly from this blow, which I don't think Dante had enough time to really process, because obviously they all got hit with axes, but they'll recover. So Weston quickly gets her an elixir that's blessed with phoenix magic to save her.
And would that have come from Hannon?
Yes.
Okay. The next day, Weston takes Aurelia with them when they leave the village, and they are on their way to the port so they can get her back to the dragons, because she still has to, stand trial. But Aurelia is outraged that anyone would try to blame what's happening with the drugs in outside villages on her. She still doesn't really get it.
I mean, in her defense, she has tried everything that she puts out there. She tests all of it. So she's like, that's just not possible. None of this should be dangerous or life-threatening.
She does make a caveat that a more dangerous effect could depend on if someone has a pre-existing health condition. But she doesn't take any accountability for anything that's happening and just continues to stay angry with Weston.
When we first meet Aurelia, she is deep in her denial from every perspective. So it's a little bit, she's not unlikable as a character, but you have a moment where you're like, girl, you're getting on my nerves.
Yes.
Just this
we
could
know
be related
Weston,
to you.
We have a history with Weston as readers. So you're automatically on his side. So then when you see someone mad at him, you're annoyed.
Well, and she pushes back, which we love a female character that doesn't just cow to the guy, but some of it.
Unless it's in the bedroom.
Yeah, that's a different kink here. But she is the aggressiveness with which she just refuses to accept anybody else's. She doesn't taking any of it in. She lets Hadriel and Weston know that she doesn't think that she has any crimes needing to be absolved for. And she thinks that Weston and his pack are actually killers and kidnappers.
I mean, to be fair, they did just kill and kidnap. She's missing a lot of context.
Hadriel manages to soften her in a hilarious scene of misunderstanding.
This is one of my favorites.
We do see a lot of Hadriel. Hadriel came with Weston and his group, not because he's a fighter, but he was so bored. He was like, yeah. Can I come with you guys? I need to do something else. But she is supposed to ride on a horse with Hadriel because Weston's trying to keep his distance when they go to leave the village. But she's trying to shy away from Hadriel because she already just assumes he's going to be uncomfortable with her. And she's never been on a horse.
But none of the people in Weston's pack actually give a shit about her not having magic or an animal.
She's just been I guess she's more of the grooming.
She's anticipating.
Yeah, she's had so many horrible things happen to her because of her lack of magic that she's already just ugh, I don't want to deal with this. Hadriel, however, is starting to have a full meltdown because he thinks that she somehow knows about the poison ivy that he got on his dick. There was an orgy in the woods and somebody was going at him from behind so hard they pushed him into it.
And she has no idea what he's talking about.
It's it just makes it so much funnier because she's like, what? This is serious. You guys are kidnapping me. And he's like, it's gone, okay? I don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah, he gets really flustered and he's like, I swear the rash is gone. And she's like, what are you talking about?
It just keeps going until finally, he talks about the rash and she's like, huh? But it actually helps to de-escalate the situation because she's so confused by him.
And she kind of gets her own Hadriel.
She does. And that's a character that we met in the
briefly
demon dungeons, and we get to see him more once she gets back to the Wyvern Kingdom. Weston took all of Aurelia's journals from her home. He literally went in and I mean, because he knows it's his true mate, although he's mad, he can't help himself from wanting to like
Know
know a little
her,
bit
yeah.
about her, but also he's hoping that there'll be some information in the journals like about her recipes and maybe some of the accomplices. So
Mhm.
like it's not like he has good reasoning, but also he just wants to know more about her.
I've just never kept a diary or journal. I remember I've tried several times, especially when I was a kid, but I never stuck with it.
I did some, but I guess because Aurelia doesn't really have any friends or anybody to talk to,
Yeah.
she needs to like vent her feelings somewhere. So not only is she on the back of a horse for the first time and not staying on very well with Hadriel, but she can see Weston looking at her journals.
God, can you imagine?
It's just like it's an invasion of privacy. So
Mhm.
she's just makes her angrier. But Weston, this is important information. Like, if you are truly the enemy, I need to know this.
Yeah.
He's able to find information related to the products she creates, but also he starts when she's young. And
Mhm.
when Aurelia was much younger, she wrote a lot of updates about the horrible abuses and schemes of Granny in her journals. And he just can't understand how Aurelia now can defend this person.
They haven't discovered Stockholm syndrome in this world.
Well, for example, there are journal entries from when she was 17 where Granny had spoiled food sent to the village.
Aurelia complained to her about this without it being fixed. And the next time there was spoiled food, Aurelia shared some of her food rations with starving children and received a beating for it.
And she was very angry. So you're like, how did she reconcile this with how she views things now? It takes many conversations throughout the journey in the book for Aurelia to remember that some of those terrible times had happened because eventually she starts looking over her journals too. And she's
Mhm.
like, oh, I'd forgotten that. She realizes how much she had suppressed just so she can get by like day to day.
There are also lots of sex scenes on the road.
Lots of sex scenes.
Don't know where everyone's showering, but let's not think about it.
Not a lot of concern for just how many people could see or hear what's happening either. Like everybody's just out there living their lives.
It's one thing if it's like like a sex party or something where everyone is kind of like watching and into it, but if you're just like 2 p.m. on a Tuesday, just in front of me, like in front of my salad, I'm
Hey,
I'm uncomfortable.
it's like it's uncomfortable to also like, am I supposed to be turned on? Should I be watching you
Yeah,
guys
is
have
everyone
sex?
jacking off? Is
Like what are we supposed to what's the etiquette
or is
here?
that rude? Like is it rude? Is it tackier to not jack off or to jack off?
Yeah, what do you want me to feel here, you know? But
What's
how
protocol?
am I supposed to handle this? Some of it, like, there's dirty things sort of happening, and then sometimes there's, like, one tent. So,
Mhm.
Aurelia and Weston will be in the tent, so everybody might not see it, but they're definitely listening,
Oh, yeah.
you know? So
And they
it's
can
like
probably scent things.
there's it's very sexy, but there's a moment where I'm like, "Huh,
Hmm.
how do we feel about this?"
You
Because
just hear
like
a good girl being thrown out, you're like, "Oh."
yeah, it's voyeurism, but it's not.
Yeah.
But Aurelia does realize as much as she likes to argue and push back with Weston, once they get a little bit sexy, she enjoys being dominated and called good girl.
I love a praise kink. And the first time Weston actually knots inside her, that's when we learn that knotting will go as long as she needs. Like it's really about her. While she continues to orgasm, he stays hard and locked in, also continuing to orgasm. I would eventually become so oversensitized
Yeah.
and the UTI I would have.
Oh my god, yeah, reality is a yeast infection, but
I just
like it's
remember
a
the
book.
first Omegaverse book I read that I literally thought they were tying their dicks in a knot, and I didn't understand why. Like, why?
Somebody please explain a little bit. He does at one point explain to her that like it's a turn on for him also to like lock his this is gross, like lock his cum inside of her. So like
Yeah, I mean, it's actually a thing with wolves. I would assume that's why to like help procreate,
yeah,
right?
I would assume, like, the animal side of it is where it starts, but it's the way that KF Breene has written these, it makes it sound sexy. If you overthink it, you're like, "Wow, that's a lot," but,
Yeah,
like
we overthink everything, but there have been a like, wasn't it Knife too that would like scoop it up and put it back into her? Like, there's
yeah,
something. I guess I don't know if it's a breeding kink or if it's just like,
probably some of all of it,
mhm.
but, like, yeah, it's one thing when you're reading and you're like, "God, is that hot?" And then, like, we're talking about it now, I'm like, "I feel
They don't
weird
get
saying
yeast
it."
infections, I guess.
They don't have the same kinda issues that we do. Yeah, Knife Bane was very there was a couple times that, like,
And it was hot.
I think Finley was, like, in her heat, like, her,
Mhm.
going into heat to,
Oh,
like, get
that's my
pregnant.
favorite part of Black Dagger Brotherhood, total
Yeah.
tangent, is when they're in there kneading.
But they're still protective of, like, "Nobody look at my girl."
Yeah.
Nifane was like, "Do you guys see this cum running down her legs?" Like,
Yes.
he was, like, parading her around the castle, like, it's hot, but, like, weird. You're like, "Whoa, what is
Again, if you
happening?"
overthink it, you're like,
Yeah, let's just enjoy the moment and keep going. After a few days of traveling, some of the villagers that were brought back for questioning, because it wasn't just Aurelia, it was anybody they thought could be a part of this operation, they actually managed to escape, and Aurelia recognizes some of her, quote, product on the ground.
Weston's pack didn't recognize it for what it was because the drug they'd seen in the other towns didn't look like that.
The pack realizes that the relaxant, if ingested in wolf form, will sever the pack bond, which is wild, and Weston was not able to grab those bonds back
Mhm.
before they could escape.
Aurelia and Hadriel both take some of the product in front of the rest of the pack to prove that there are no lasting effects. And what she's making is not the same as what's being sold on the streets, which was like a big leap for Hadriel
Yeah,
to trust her and take that.
Hadriel's like, "I'll be okay, right? I'm so bored. What are we gonna do here?" But the rest of the pack is having a moment, like, they wanna be mad at her because some of
Mhm.
the pack has
'Cause she's
lost.
still at the end of the day, like, yes, it's being altered, but she's still the creator.
Yeah, it's out there because of her,
Mhm.
technically. But they also have moments where they're like, "This is not what we've seen before. This looks very different."
Yeah.
So there's a lot they're at least they're questioning and they're looking at her and seeing her for her.
I kept thinking of Breaking Bad because his product, like, they eventually I can't remember, like, what season or storyline, but someone was, like, cutting it with other things
Uh-huh.
to, like, make more of it, and it was an inferior product, and he was just so mad.
Well, yeah, if I created this, don't mess with it. This
It
is
wasn't
my
like the
creation.
pure blue color or whatever it was supposed to be.
Oh, yeah, I get that. That'd be annoying. Through many of the emotional and intense scenes, Weston also manages to pull Aurelia's wolf close to the surface.
But he doesn't know how to tell her that Granny lied to her about having an animal and magic. Like, it's actually easy to feel that she does, and someone with less power than Granny could have felt it. So it's not like she didn't know.
Like, there's so many things that she's been lied to about, and he is turning her life upside down. How do I explain this to you and have you believe me?
Mhm.
Like, it's just going to be such a betrayal. She continues to frustrate him with her loyalty to Granny. So, again, how can I tell you about the problems? Like, you're not going to want to see it. But he also does recognize, again, he just went in and tore her from her home.
Mhm.
This is like, whether it's perfect or not, this is her bubble that she has like resolved herself to. This is what she knows, and he's ripping her out of it. It's the main life that the only life that she
Mhm.
really knows. He doesn't want to release her wolf yet either, because not only will she feel betrayed and probably not trust anyone because she doesn't know him enough to trust him yet, and she's just going to feel lied to regardless. It's been kept from her, but she is also probably going to try to flee, and most likely Granny has people that are out there looking for her.
Because they need her. Like, she is the maker of the product that they're then tampering with, but they still need her to make it. She's the Walter White of the
She
operation,
is the Walter White.
the Heisenberg.
The relationship between Weston and Aurelia, and between Aurelia and most of the pack, does change as they travel.
Well, it's hard to reconcile the person they meet and interact with the person who would create such harmful drugs for profit. Not that she was profiting, but and they're slowly starting to realize that about her, about how used and manipulated she was. But it is still like you would still have anger, like especially if you were personally like you had a family member who overdosed or something.
Well, and because when they directly talk about the drugs, she is very quick to be defensive and put her
Yes.
back
It
up.
isn't like she yeah, exactly. She doesn't, "Oh, you know what? I didn't know that this was happening. That's
Yeah.
terrible."
So it's frustrating for anybody trying to discuss it with her, but like on any other subject, she seems like naive and
Mhm.
kind, or like she'll tell stories that they KF Breene has a great way of presenting things that are really terrible and sad, but they use like a dark humor so
Mhm.
that it's not as hard to read, I guess, if that makes sense. Like, you hear it and it is terrible, but it's presented in such a way that you can understand, but you're not traumatized reading through it or
Mhm.
discussing it. So there are times when she's telling these stories and the pack starts to tease her like, "God, your life is sad. Man,
Mm.
that's depressing." And
Yeah.
it's like part of Hadriel's humor too that just helps her to be more comfortable just discussing her life in general.
Mhm.
Weston also realizes after reading her journals and, of course, spending time with her, plus the pack trying some of her products, She is not the person putting something deadly and addicting on the market. Even if she may have created some of this, whatever is happening, this is not because of her.
Yeah, she's not the one altering them.
And if she was creating them, her intention was not to harm people when she was creating, like, whatever caused her to come up with these ideas, it wasn't from a place of being cruel.
Mhm.
He simply can't let her go, though, because, again, there are members of his pack that have lost loved ones to the drug. So even if they begin to soften towards her, they still want somebody to pay, and they see her as a representative of Granny's organization. So they still want some justice from her.
Well, and even if they're starting to on her, there's still the dragons that have not been on this journey and gotten to know her. So, like, you can't just go back and be like, "We decided to let her go because we decided amongst ourselves
Yeah.
that she wasn't liable."
If nothing else, the dragons are still going to want to have a chance to
Yeah.
question her and get more information.
Aurelia's already been planning an escape for days, so Weston just makes it easier by leaving large gaps in the pack coverage at night and letting her drug him.
It's actually very sweet because he confesses to knowing about the drug right after he takes it. So she's like, "You knew and you let me do that." And they have a sweet moment before he passes out and she runs to a nearby village.
Even when she's now realized that Granny lied about so much, she still trusted that she hadn't lied about her product until she gets to the village and sees some of these drugged out victims and finds the wrappers and products that Granny was selling. So, like,
This
she has to see it for herself. Like, she has to see the effects and the product.
and there's so many things, like, as they're traveling and discussing things that have happened in the village, Aurelia's beginning to realize that Granny was cruel, and she's seeing those things, but there's somehow she still just hadn't brought herself to realize that Granny could be lying about giving out her instructions whenever she
Mhm.
sold something, or like
Well, it would be
she
really hard to accept the fact that something you were creating caused so much pain and, like, death and
well, and this is also a person that you saw as a family member.
Mhm.
So then
She brought her sticky
yeah,
buns.
you have to question everything about, did I matter at all? Was I special? Like,
Mhm.
it just she hadn't brought herself to that point until she sees these people suffering. Even worse, the wrappers for their product look like the artwork that she drew for Granny on a card when she was a
That is
child.
so fucked up. That is, like, next level, like, it was already bad, but
Because, like, at one point, I think, because she has, like, a side hobby, she likes to, like, draw with charcoal, which it's not heavily discussed, but it is something that's out there.
Mhm.
And Weston's like, "Do you think she would have used any of your art?" And she's like, "No, I didn't show her my art. It was for me. It was personal." This was literally a card she made her
Mhm.
that Granny took that and, like, ran with it.
Aurelia gets a room for the night at a local inn, then she goes to the town market to find these products, and she questions the guy at the stall pretty aggressively, essentially putting a target on her back, like bringing attention to her when she should be in hiding. Then, like an idiot, she buys some of the product and decides to sample it while out on the street in a strange town where she doesn't know anyone.
I had a real moment reading this because I was like, "Girl, are you being fucking
It's
serious
like when
right
I was
now?"
watching White Lotus and they took those drugs, they didn't know what it was, and they're just in Thailand. Like, what are you doing?
Yeah, in a foreign country with strangers, like, I hope you don't get taken. Like, what is wrong with you? But she has such a logical thought process, like, she wants to catalog the effects, she wants to test the
Like a
differences.
scientific process.
Yeah, like, just the way she's thinking of it, but she doesn't make sure she's somewhere safe first around
Mhm.
people she knows, like, she just does it right there. She opens the package and she finds there is a strange waxing, like, coating around her original product that she's gonna have to look into, but she takes the drug, and it actually makes her sick in the beginning, like, makes her wanna throw up before the actual, quote, "journey" and hallucination begin.
And the fail safes that she built in, they do still work and she's able to come down from the high on her own, but then she's immediately captured.
Well, as well as I'm like, I know that you have been very sheltered for a while, but, like, girl, do you think you're safe? Like,
Yeah.
you just made a scene. Come on. It Her likeness had been sent around to everyone that was dealing Granny's products so that they could keep an eye out for her.
Then she was dumb enough to cause a scene while purchasing the product, so it wasn't exactly hard for them to catch her.
They were like, that girl looks familiar." And then she makes a
Mhm.
big scene. And you're like, okay, that's definitely her. She's taken to the mayor's house to be held as a prisoner until Alexander, remember that creep enforcer can get to her.
And the mayor is on Granny's payroll. I hate saying Granny. Granny's
I
payroll.
can't call her G because that makes her sound cool, and she's
That's
not.
true. She is a G. I
She
mean, she
really
is. This
is.
is more like The Wire meets fairy tale.
Yeah. When Weston wakes the next morning, he still has to pretend that he was drugged unknowingly. He has to
He's like, oh no,
he's like,
I've been drugged.
oh, she's gone. So he sends out members of his pack in different directions to search for her, like quote unquote search. But really, they're going to the local village just to kind of gather some intel.
Including Hadriel, who overhears in the local pub that she was captured, so he makes sure to get word back to Weston. Weston comes to her rescue, killing the mayor and finding her comatose in the prison room.
This is another moment where I just want to shake her because Aurelia took this opportunity in prison instead of watching her back. She's like, you know what? As I try to catalog some of the more differences in this drug, I'll just take more of the drug. I'm here anyway.
Yeah. She later argues that she couldn't figure out a way to fix this if she doesn't know how it works, which is true, but she didn't anticipate that the waxy coating on the outside of her drug would have, or the drug would have a compounding effect and essentially poison her.
Yeah, the high had worn off. So I guess she just assumed she could take more because it was done. But whatever's going on with this waxy coating is still in her system. So it starts to build up and have much more severe effects.
Did you ever get those little wax candies that was like a shape of a bottle and it would have liquid in it?
Yeah. And I was like, we don't
Did
eat
we
the
all
wax.
eat the wax?
I didn't.
Okay.
But I didn't really.
Yeah, me either.
I don't really understand.
I did. I was like, I just ate the whole thing.
I mean, I guess you.
No one said anything. I don't think it went on for a long time, but I have this memory of watching someone else just drink it, and I was like, oh yeah, me too. That's what I've been doing all along.
I don't know if you were if the wax was actually okay to eat or not, but I'm glad that your stomach supported that.
Yeah, I mean, okay. I think it's why I have a steel stomach now. It's just wax covered.
Nothing can bother you now. Once Weston gets her back to his camp, she's given more of that Phoenix elixir to save her life again.
Later on the road, she tells the pack that she didn't feel the hook to make her addicted, and she doesn't understand the addiction. She makes it clear to some of those people who had loved ones who got addicted that those people would have needed to continue taking this multiple times despite it making them sick before they got addicted to it. So she's just not really understanding.
Well, because even for those that had a really good high or a good quote journey, it wasn't so intense that you're like, ooh, I can't wait to do that again.
Yeah.
So and it made her sick before. So she's like, I don't understand. And everybody wanted to point fingers that she had made something super chemically addictive. And she's like, no, they had to have repeatedly taken this, felt horrible effects, and kept going.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it doesn't let anybody off the hook for what happened, but she's like, no, again, I didn't make something as awful as you think I did.
Well, there's also a cure. She learned in the town that the dragons had a cure, but it's too expensive for the common man to afford, allegedly. So she happily blames the Wyvern Kingdom for also being part of the problem.
This girl is ballsy.
Yeah.
Because much later, she throws that at the dragons as a final, just like, oh yeah, and this. And they were like, girl, we sell it at cost. Your kingdom is corrupt, and they added really high taxes on it. Yeah. So she's like, oh, that's
tariffs
all I got.
Are going too far.
She's like, oh, okay, well, great. Alexander does try to attack a day's ride from the port, and although he got some good hits in on Aurelia, it surprised me because Weston is like, I will protect you, I'll protect you, but there were so many coming at them that Weston was grabbing the bonds for so many wolves, he couldn't physically be in front of Aurelia. So she fights back, but Alexander does get some good hits in. She was holding her own.
And he fled when Weston did start gaining back control of Alexander's pack.
They spend the night in the port city, then they go to board the ship to take them back to Wyvern. In the street, a girl runs up to Aurelia to give her a letter from Granny. As Aurelia learns Granny might still be alive, she's being hustled onto the ship with the rest of Weston's group.
She actually sees Psycho Granny waving from the dock when she's on the ship deck.
I mean, Granny is literally standing there in a matching red cape. Just to run it, just to rub it all in. Granny's letter was really, really manipulative. It also ended with a threat that I guess if you were being manipulated, you might think it was sweet,
Mhm.
but she definitely let Aurelia know that she would find her wherever they take her.
It's all context, because even in ACOTAR where Cassian's like, "I will find you in any life," like, if you're hearing that from a stalker, you would take that very differently. But she also in this letter threw in an "I love you," and she's never said that to Aurelia before, so, like, she's really laying it on.
It just broke Aurelia's heart because it's like, "I've been waiting so long to hear it, and this is when you use it."
Mhm.
Once they're standing on the ship deck, Weston walks up and he confirms that he knew that Granny was still alive the whole time, and scene.
The and scene. The last book in the series begins with Aurelia on the ship journeying to Wyvern and coming to terms with all of her feelings about Granny, like all of her feelings in general. She hadn't really had time to process her death. Now she's suddenly alive, and Aurelia has to face all of the cruelty and manipulation that she's been ignoring and making excuses for.
Aurelia decides that when they land in Wyvern, she wants to go to a much less powerful alpha so that a stranger who doesn't know Aurelia's history or any of this story can confirm that she really has magic.
And this hillbilly alpha does confirm that she has an animal in magic, and he starts to help her unsuppress her animal. And she realizes she really wants Weston to do it.
God.
And guess how he does it?
The minute that Weston does this, her animal comes to the surface and Weston's animal, and they're like magnets, and they immediately have to mate.
So naturally, they fuck in front of the whole pack.
I mean, this goes
Okay.
back to our conversation earlier. Like, what's everybody doing? Because Hadriel is one of those that loves to be front and center. Because like anytime like Nifane or Finley would act up, he is standing right there just watching.
Well, I don't know what to do with my hands if I'm just standing and like I don't have my phone.
I mean, like, are we just eating lunch? Are we just
Yeah. Are
watching
we
to see what?
standing and or sitting or
And again, are people jacking off? Like, are we getting turned
I
on?
don't
Or we're not supposed to
know.
be turned on? Like, it's so confusing. They're literally just sitting around on their horses waiting because they made a stop on their way to the castle. So they're like, "Okay, guys, you finishing
Okay,
up
like
anytime
looking at
soon?"
their watches. Through this sex, Weston and Aurelia's wolves initiate the four-way bond before Aurelia understands this is permanent. Because again, she grew up thinking that she wasn't a shifter, didn't have magic. She's kind of like Finley was in the beginning, where she doesn't know anything about shifter like dynamics or
Mhm.
anything.
It's not that Aurelia would have said no, but she didn't even have a chance to think about it before the wolves were like, "This is happening."
Yeah.
Shortly after arriving at the castle, Aurelia also learns that she's Weston's true mate, so she didn't know any of that
But
either.
she doesn't learn it from Weston.
No, somebody's talking about it in front of her, and she's like,
Excuse
"What?
me?
What do you mean?" She wasn't told sooner because she wouldn't have been able to really understand this without access to her animal.
But she still doesn't know what to think even now that she does have access to her animal. She doesn't like that it's already been decided for her. She didn't get to try dating first. Like now that her animal is free, she has a mate, and she's not angry at Weston about the bond, but it is kind of like Granny robbing her of choice, and that's a feeling that Weston is going to understand more than anyone, like being robbed of your choice.
Yeah, and it's not a large plot point, but Weston has a moment when Aurelia first meets Hannon, which was Finley's brother, and we learned he's a Phoenix shifter. She first meets Hannon, and like attraction runs through the bond, and Weston's like, "Whoa, what's that?" But Hadriel talks him down, and he's like, "She will see that nature chose you for a reason, but she hasn't
Mhm.
had a chance to really explore any of this." So Weston is so sweet. He gives her a chance to, like, spend time with Hannon. Not
Yeah.
that, like, she and Hannon are hooking up or doing anything, but he gives her a chance to, like, just
She missed out on, like, little flirting, and
yeah. Well, and I don't think she's naive and sheltered enough. I don't think she wasn't a virgin, but, like, these men weren't treating her like a princess before.
everyone
So,
called her a dud. Like, can you imagine being fucked and called a dud?
yeah, like, I think there's a couple men that were in that little village with her that, like, they would fool around and do stuff, but it's not like they were nice to her. It was
Because she
just
is
like
hot.
yeah.
Like, just like her mom bagged a royal, they're still hot.
Yeah, so she was beautiful, but, like, they wouldn't really, like, treat her respectfully either. But it is sweet that by Weston, like, not being overbearing and protective about his bondmate, which is, we love when they're like, "She's mine." He
Mhm.
actually gives her a chance to appreciate him being who
Yeah.
he is too. So that's just a little side note. Like, nothing happens with Hannon really, and Hannon has a moment where she finally, like, truly chooses Weston, and he's like, "Oh, okay,
Well,
I
I
will be
think that
respectful."
it's more meaningful giving her the space to actually choose you than just like, "Well, fuck, nature chose you, so."
Well, because nature, in theory, when you have like the fated mates, you want to hope that nature knows what it's doing. But like she needs a chance to see that nature
Hmm.
knows what it's doing. And Weston's had a lot more experience, so it's easier for him to be like, yeah, this works. Aurelia is also kept in the same tower room where Nifane kept Finley.
And she's not a true prisoner because of her bond with Weston, but she still has to face the dragons for a formal inquiry and she has to explain herself. Like everything that they have figured out since she left, she has to explain all of that, like that someone was tampering with it and that what she was making, I guess, versus what made it onto the streets.
And Weston does tell Nifane and Finley, like, she is my true mate. And he gives an account of his experiences without sounding like he's very concerned about not sounding like he's pleading because he wants to sound like he's making logical, like giving logical information.
Hmm.
And I think they do understand and they understand where she's been and how she grew up. But they're like, we still need to ask these investigative
Yes, there are still
questions.
people who have died.
Well, and now that Finley has, not Finley, excuse me, now that Aurelia has seen some of the effects of these drugs, like she does accept guilt. She
Yeah, she
feels
gets it now.
that's not how she created it to affect people, but she feels terrible that it has happened and it came from something she created. So it is different when she talks about it with them. She's not as like defensive as she
Hmm.
was in the first book. Hannon, I think it's Kalia. It's Calia. Kalia, a fairy from the royal court who we met in the demon dungeons, and she happens to just be visiting. And Nifane's mother are there with Nifane, Finley, and Weston for this questioning.
Spoiler alert, we learned at the end of book 3 that Nifane's mother was actually still alive, and she's now the Queen Mother. And although she's not in charge, she does help with the truth elixir and any other elixirs needed for this questioning. Last night we watched the silliest movie. Another simple favor, the A Simple Favor 2, and there was a truth serum
Uh
that was
huh.
used and I was like, is this real?
I mean, people have referenced it before. Like, it is real, but it's not actually used. It's sodium, is it thiopental? I forgot exactly, but it was created in hopes it would lower people's inhibitions.
It
So when
just
you
makes
ask
you high,
questions,
right?
no, I did. That was a
She
weird.
seemed high.
Yeah, that was a weird thing in the movie. In general, I think it's supposed to lower your guard so that you answer without thinking first. It doesn't really quite work. It's not a real. That's why it's not used in actual tactics for any reason.
But I didn't hate the movie. Like it was silly and it was very, I would say, campy. But
It's
it
one of
kind of
those.
knew it. It kind of like leaned into it.
Some of it was just like, okay, that's not realistic,
Yeah.
but it
No,
made it
none of this would
funnier.
have happened. There is a lot of incest.
Yeah, there was a. It was interesting.
There were some scenes that were pretty uncomfortable. I was like, I wonder
Why
why.
are we doing this? But I actually, yeah, I didn't hate it. I enjoyed. We had fun watching it
Hmm.
with our friends. Hannon in this questioning is a phoenix shifter, which didn't really talk about it last week. Spoiler alert, it was a total surprise. Phoenixes are super, super rare and Hannon dies, and that's
Yeah,
how he first shifts.
he
So
didn't
like
think that he had an animal. He had to die.
like he could feel something, but it was kind of trapped and none of
Hmm.
the alphas could bring it out, and then he died in book 4 because of the demons, and that's actually how he shifted for the first time. But we didn't mention it before because spoiler, but as a phoenix shifter, he can read and also gain power from people's emotions. So he's there for the questioning because he can confirm what Aurelia is actually feeling.
I would honestly love a Hannon book
Oh yeah.
where he gets his own.
He's very we talked about last week how he doesn't conform to a lot of the gender norms,
Hmm.
and he's very steadfast and he's good looking. He just seems like a really like nice guy.
Yeah.
I'd love to read it.
Kalia uses the questioning as an opportunity to ask Aurelia about the special fairy lantern found with Aurelia's things, and the lantern was gifted to Aurelia by Granny, but Kalia tells them that the lantern had been gifted by the fairy court to the Red Lupine court.
Like, wow, that's a much bigger deal than you thought it
Hmm.
was. The Red Lupine Court had been told that when they could light the lantern, there would be peace between their kingdoms, but really it was a jinx because the lantern can only be lit by someone with fairy blood.
And the only people in the room who can make the lantern work are Kalia, obviously a fairy, and Aurelia.
Aurelia,
Hmm.
Aurelia
She was
doesn't.
a fairy.
I know. So, like, you have this exciting moment because Aurelia doesn't know who her father is. So now the question becomes, was her father a fairy or a shifter?
Hmm. She She's sure that her grandparents were shifter and her mother didn't have magic, but her grandparents are dead, so there's really no one to ask.
So, like, without giving spoilers about who her father could have been or what this means, we do find out that further back in her mother's bloodline, there was some fairy blood, which the combination of the different species mating actually canceled out with each other. So that's why her mother didn't have magic. I just had a thought. There was another series. Was it the Crossbreed series?
Where it cancels out?
Yeah, like I think it's the Crossbreed series. Like the cheetahs wouldn't mate with other shifters because it would like dull the magic together.
That sounds right.
But anyway, so like with Aurelia's mother, the combination actually left her with no magic, but for
Mhm.
Aurelia, it did the opposite. So this is a whole new world. She hadn't expected any of that. But it is going to mean that Aurelia is going to be really important in the grand scheme of things with the
Mhm.
fairies. Like, what is her magic actually going to reflect as? Because fairy magic is
There's a
really,
lot of different
it's
kinds
very
of fairy magic.
individual and it can vary greatly. So they have to kind of suss out what it means and test her.
This formal questioning also leads to a race against time for Aurelia. She has to find a way to break down the components of Granny's addition to her product so that she can find a way to bring down the Empire before that old bitch can reach her.
Yeah, because Granny will definitely come for Aurelia.
Well, and Aurelia's also not off the hook yet with the dragons. They want to see her make the product and learn about it before they can like absolve her of the worst of her crimes, since she was still part of the production.
They need to find out not only the root of Granny's organization, but a way to counter the drugs in order to save all of the kingdoms from its effects.
These books, like in this series as a whole, just it has all of our favorites. Like it has broody MMCs, smart and strong-willed FMCs, fated mates, possessive alphas, like funny side characters that no one can write like KF Breene. I mean, praise kinks and nodding. It's just well-written smut. And like I feel like smut has been used as a bad word, but I mean it in a good way. Like smut with world building and interesting characters you really care about. Like this is cliterature.
I like literature. I love that.
Yeah, and well, I just love also that KF Breene includes not just women with trauma, but men. Like Weston has his own trauma that he's dealing with. It's not just a man fixing a woman or saving her. Like it's them healing together.
You're also able to see like your favorite characters from the first 4 books and how their lives have continued and changed. And of course, the spice is
The
spicing
spice
more than
is spice.
ever.
How many chili peppers out of 5?
It's still not a full like there might be people having sex around each other,
4?
but it's still not like full group scene. So
Yeah.
at least a 4, maybe 4.5. Some of it is like the dirty
Dirty.
kinks that you're like,
Yeah.
ooh, I wasn't expecting to read that. Ooh, speaking of spoiler alert, you mentioned last week, like, don't we see the animals fucking in their animal form?
Yes, this is the one.
We do.
Mhm.
We didn't get into it last week, but there's a couple times like she's not as graphic with that. So it's
Yeah.
easier to read, but you're like, wow, like
Mhm.
they're honest about it. There's so many different sides to this. It's so fun.
Well, I love that she does this in a lot of her series where it's a certain number of books about these people, but then you get to stay in the world and then revisit some of those characters. And I can't think of another author that really does it like she does.
And you get like well-developed characters. You get a lot of information about them too. They're not just there to like further the plot or like for a little comic relief. There's so much more.
Yeah, we get to see them like start a family and
Yeah.
everything. It's just very sweet. And KF Breene month continues next week with Shadowspell Academy. We're really taking a turn from a 4 chili pepper to like a no chili pepper.
It is so much. It's
It's
so
great. It's
well
just
written
very
though.
different.
Yeah.
And it was actually written by Breene with Shannon Mayer, another great author whose A Court of Honey and Ash I read.
Yeah, I read that too. It was good.
And then we received an arc of Obsidian, and that is the first book in KF Breene's new series, Shadowbound Fae, which comes out in July. And that's about Daisy from the Demigod series, but it doesn't look like you have to have read those books to read this one. Kind of like you could, in theory, pick up Weston's book without having read Finley's books, you know?
Good, because I haven't had a chance to read those yet and I want to.
And it looks like KF Breene on her website has rated it at least 3 chili peppers, so
I can't wait to
high
read it.
hopes.
Everything she writes, whether it's like full of spice or not, it's so interesting that
She's
it
a
keeps you.
consistently good author putting out good books.
Yeah, it keeps you coming back.
Yeah.
Well, DM us books you think we should cover in the future.
Thanks, y'all.
Bye.